Imagine stopping a live, high-octane concert. Like you're right in the middle of this massive funk show in front of 20,000 screaming fans.
Right, the energy is just through the roof.
Exactly. And you don't pause to, I don't know, tune a guitar? Or even catch your breath.
No, of course not.
You don't give some heartfelt monologue about world peace or whatever. You literally stop the entire show just to have a bandmate hold up a mirror so you can check your hair.
Which is just, honestly, it's an unbelievable move.
It's so audacious. And I mean, today, if you see that level of viral, hyper-calculated self-awareness, it's totally baked into the marketing rollout of almost every pop star out there.
Oh, absolutely. We completely expect it now.
Right. We expect artists to just hand us this fully realized three-dimensional aesthetic universe from day one.
Yeah, but you have to remember, back in the early 1980s, pulling a stunt like that, it wasn't some calculated viral TikTok strategy.
No, it was a totally different world.
It was an absolute revolution.
And that's exactly our mission for this deep dive today. We are looking at the architects of this shift, the ones who really changed the game, Morris Day and the Time.
Such a crucial group to talk about.
They really are. They completely rewired the whole concept of music branding for all of us.
Yeah, they took music, image, personality, performance, and just fused them into this single, indivisible thing.
Right, proving that style isn't just this, like, accessory you slap onto a band after the songs are recorded.
No, style is the bedrock.
Yes, it's the foundation. So, to everyone listening right now, we're going to unpack exactly how they pulled this off.
And to really understand the magnitude of what they accomplished, we kind of have to start by dismantling how we traditionally measure musical influence.
Which is usually just a numbers game, right?
Exactly. And from there, we'll dive into the psychology of character performance. Like specifically, how to inhabit a highly stylized persona without it devolving into some, chief gimmick.
Because that is a very fine line to walk.
It really is. And finally, we'll analyze the rigorous, almost militaristic musical discipline that was actually required to anchor that level of visual flamboyance.
Because without that discipline, the whole thing just falls apart, right?
Completely. It collapses.
Okay, so let's tackle that first point, because I feel like it really sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about.
Yeah, let's get into it.
When we usually argue about a musician's legacy or, their influence, we instantly default to the math.
We do. It's the easiest thing to reach for.
Right. We look at the Billboard Hot 100, we count the platinum records, we look at stadium ticket sales, or today, Spotify stream.
All the tangible stuff.
Exactly. We build our arguments on things that fit really neatly onto a graph or a spreadsheet.
And we lean on those metrics because they provide this false sense of objective truth.
A false sense? How do you mean?
Well, a record sale is a tangible data point, right? But cultural influence is rarely captured by a spreadsheet.
That makes sense.
Like, if you judge the 1980s purely by record sales, you get a very skewed version of what was actually changing the DNA of pop culture.
Because the numbers don't tell the whole story.
Exactly. Traditional metrics kind of isolate the audio from the broader human experience.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they measure how many people bought the physical plastic disc, not how the music shifted the way people walked or talked or even perceived themselves.
Right, but let me push back on that for a second. Doesn't that inherently devalue the music?
How so?
Well, if we start saying things like, okay, sure, they didn't sell as many records as Michael Jackson, but they had a really great vibe, aren't we just making
Excuses for a lack of commercial dominance, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. It feels a bit like we're moving the goalposts when the traditional metrics don't tell the story we want them to tell.
I see why it looks like that, but I don't think it's about moving the goalposts at all. I think it's about recognizing that we're playing an entirely different game.
Okay, a different game. Explain that.
Let's look at the mechanics of parasocial relationships and semiotics in performance.
Big words, but okay, I'm with you.
Right, sorry. When a listener connects with an artist, they aren't just connecting with a melody. They're connecting with a symbol.
Like an identity.
Yes. Now, in the analog era, the delivery mechanisms for that symbol were pretty slow.
Like waiting for a song to come on the radio.
Right. Radio play or maybe a monthly magazine feature. You didn't see the artist every day.
So the visual aspect was secondary.
For a lot of acts, yes. But Morris Day and the Time operated as if they were in a modern multimedia environment before it even fully existed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They understood that the audience consumes context just as hungrily as they consume audio.
That is a great way to put it. We consume the context.
Exactly. So if your measuring stick only measure the audio, it completely misses the cultural tectonic plates shifting underneath.
I see what you mean now. It's almost like, okay, it's like analyzing the impact of the zoot suit era in the 1930s and 40s by only looking at textile manufacturing data. Oh, that is a perfect analogy.
Right. Because if you just look at the fabric, you miss the entire cultural rebellion of Cab Calloway and the whole jazz subculture.
You miss the meaning behind the suit.
Yeah. So Morris Day and the Time basically recognized that this digital era demand for a complete three-dimensional presentation was coming.
Even if the actual technology wasn't there yet to support it.
Right. They built a brand.
They did, but we really have to be careful with that word today.
The word brand.
Yeah, because today, building a brand often implies something deeply cynical,
Oh,
right?
for sure. It feels very corporate.
Exactly. It implies a boardroom of executives sitting around analyzing market trends and just slapping an aesthetic onto some teenager.
Yeah, it feels manufactured.
But Morris Day and the Time represent the exact opposite of that. They represent the art of the unforced identity.
The unforced identity. That's a tough concept to swallow, though, when we're talking about a band wearing matching zoot suits.
I mean, they're doing synchronized dance routines, acting like these cartoonish playboys. By definition, a stage persona like that is artificial.
On the surface, yes.
So how does anyone put on a flashy suit, step onto a stage, act completely over the top, and somehow avoid looking like they're just desperate for the spotlight?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The distinction really lies in their commitment to the stylized reality.
Commitment, like they buy into their own hype.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Authenticity in performance art doesn't mean being your mundane, everyday self. No one wants to pay high ticket prices to watch an artist just be normal.
Right, I can stay home for normal.
Exactly. Authenticity means committing so fully to the concept that the audience accepts it as a new reality.
Okay, I think I get that.
Think about early cinema for a second.
Okay.
The actors who failed to transition from silent films to talkies. They often failed because their physical pantomime suddenly felt totally forced when paired with audio.
Oh, because they were caught acting.
Yes, they were caught acting. Morris Day and the Time never got caught acting.
Wow, that's such a good point.
They inhabited this hyper-cool, untouchable persona with just absolute conviction.
There was no daylight between the concept and the execution.
Not at all.
They never winked at the audience. They never broke character to say, hey, look at this funny bit we're doing up here.
Precisely. And if you look at today's landscape, artists are constantly engineering these viral moments.
Constantly.
They're reacting to whatever trend is dominating social media that week.
Yeah.
And it creates this frantic, desperate energy.
It's totally reactive. It's reactive branding.
Yes. But Morris Day and the Time had a clear, unshakable understanding of their identity.
And when you know exactly who you are, you don't have to chase the audience's attention.
Exactly. The attention gravitates to you because your identity is self-sustaining.
Right, but you can't just mandate an unshakable identity in a vacuum. You need a center of gravity.
You do.
You need a front man who can actually pull off that level of stylized reality without flinching.
Which brings us to the psychology of Morris Day's actual character performance.
Yes. Let's get into Morris Day himself.
It is so crucial to distinguish him from a standard lead vocalist.
Because a standard vocalist just interprets a melody.
Right. They stand at the mic and sing the song. Day operated as an entertainer in like the classic vaudevillian sense.
Oh, totally.
He embodied a very specific archetype, the ultra-suave, unapologetically vain hustler, and he elevated it to high art.
He really weaponized arrogance.
He did.
But what really fascinates me is the humor.
The humor is key.
Because usually, right, when a band introduces comedy into their live set, they instantly cross the line into novelty act territory.
Yeah, they become a parody band.
Exactly. They become a joke. So how did he manage to be genuinely funny while still maintaining the aura of a legitimate, dangerously cool rock star?
It really comes down to timing and nonverbal communication.
Timing, sure.
Humor in music usually fails because it breaks the musical tension. Day used humor to heighten the tension.
Oh, that's interesting.
He understood that arrogance, without a slight edge of absurdity, is just off-putting. Nobody likes someone who's just purely arrogant.
Right, it's just annoying.
Exactly. But by introducing this almost theatrical level of vanity, he gave the audience permission to laugh with him, not at him.
So let's talk about the mirror.
Yes, the mirror.
Because I really think that single prop is one of the most brilliant pieces of semiotics in the history of live music.
It's iconic.
Picture it. The band is laying down this incredibly complex, aggressive funk groove. The crowd is in an absolute frenzy.
Sweating, dancing.
Yeah, and right in the middle of it, the frontman calls his valet over, pulls out a mirror, and just checks his hair.
It's incredible. What does that communicate to you as an audience member?
I mean, it tells me he is completely untouchable.
Exactly.
It takes an unbelievable amount of confidence to look at a screaming stadium and basically say, hold on, my reflection is more important than you right now.
It's a massive flex.
It's a huge flex, but because it's so absurd, it's also hilarious.
And he doesn't need to sing a single lyric about how cool he is.
No, the mirror does all the heavy lifting. It's a visual shortcut to his entire character.
It is world building
Yes.
through a single repeatable action,
World building, yeah.
much like a classic film character's silhouette or specific lighting cue. The mirror instantly grounded the audience in his specific reality.
It communicated vanity, control, and a complete disregard for traditional rock and roll humility.
Exactly.
But okay, here is the massive risk with that.
There's definitely a risk.
Right, because if you lean that heavily into a prop and you spend half your time acting like a vaudeville comedian, you are daring the audience to stop taking you seriously.
You're walking on a tightrope.
If you act like a clown, people will treat you like a clown. So why didn't they become a joke?
Because of the counterbalance.
The counterbalance.
Yeah, you cannot execute that level of visual looseness and theatrical arrogance without an underlying structure that is absolutely rigid.
Meaning the band itself.
Exactly. The music would earn them the right to the style.
Okay, let's dig deep into that musical discipline. Because simply saying, they were a tight band, it really doesn't do justice to what was actually happening on those stages and in those studios.
No, it doesn't. We are talking about the genesis of the Minneapolis sound here.
Right, and how would you define that for someone who might not know?
Well, the Minneapolis sound is essentially a hybrid.
Okay.
It took the deep, syncopated funk of the late 70s, stripped away the massive horn sections that bands like, say, Earth, Wind, and Fire relied on.
Right, the big organic bands.
Yeah, and it replaced those horns with cutting, aggressive synthesizers.
Which gave it that really sharp edge.
Exactly. But more importantly, it relied on a very specific approach to rhythm.
The mechanical mixed with the human.
You nailed it. You had the introduction of the Linn LM1 drum machine.
The legendary LM1.
Right. And this wasn't just a metronome. It was this robotic, quantized foundation that never wavered.
It was aggressively perfect.
Exactly. It provided an aggressively perfect beat. And against that robotic perfection, you had real human musicians playing slap bass, rhythm guitar, and keyboards.
But the humans had to play with the precision of machines.
That is the crucial element. If you have a drum machine that doesn't breathe, the musicians can't afford to be sloppy.
No room for error.
None. The rehearsal culture behind this music was notoriously grueling.
I've heard stories.
Yeah, it borrowed heavily from the James Brown School of Band Management.
But, James Brown was famous for his fine system, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like if a horn player missed a cue or a guitarist played a dominant seventh chord instead of a minor seventh, James would literally flash them a hand signal on stage.
Right in the middle of the song.
Right. Which meant they were being fined $50 from their paycheck.
It's brutal, but the exact same ethos applied here. Musical discipline meant nobody played out of turn.
Wow.
Every single horn blast, every synthesizer stab, every complex bass fill, it was all meticulously arranged.
So there was no room for, self-indulgent jamming.
Absolutely not. The groove was constructed like a Swiss watch. If one gear slipped, the entire mechanism failed.
So we have this intense, almost militaristic musical environment behind him.
Yes.
Does that rigid discipline actually make Morris Day's flamboyant, comedic character work better?
It is the only reason the character works at all.
Really?
The only reason?
Think about it. The band acts as the ultimate straight man in a comedy duo.
Oh, I love that comparison.
You have a front man who is loose, preening, breaking the fourth wall, checking himself in a mirror.
Just doing whatever he wants.
Exactly. And behind him, you have a band that is locked into a groove so devastatingly perfect, so mathematically precise, that it feels almost lethal.
It validates his arrogance.
Exactly.
If he was acting like God's gift to the world, but his band was sloppy and they were dropping the tempo, he would just look delusional.
He'd look foolish.
Yeah, he'd look like an amateur who didn't even know his own house was on fire.
Right. But because the music is flawless, his arrogance feels earned.
That makes total sense. The absolute perfection of the groove provides the gravity that keeps the flashy image from floating away into parody.
So they act as counterweights.
Exactly. The musical discipline matches the clarity of the image. You have hyper-stylized visual chaos balanced perfectly by microscopic musical control.
And when you fuse those two things together, right? The unforced visual identity and that relentless musical discipline, you arrive at the ultimate legacy of Morris Day and the time.
Which is the fully realized concept.
Yes, the fully realized concept. Let's talk about that.
This is where their influence on the modern era becomes completely undeniable.
Because everyone is trying to do this today.
Everyone. A fully realized concept means that style, sound, and personality are no longer competing for the audience's attention.
They aren't in conflict.
No, they are working in tandem to deliver a single thesis.
See, usually we see an intense competition between those elements.
We really do.
Like, an artist who wants to be taken seriously as a real musician will often deliberately tone down their visual style.
Right, the acoustic guitar and plain t-shirt phase.
Exactly. They'll wear plain jeans and a t-shirt on stage just to signal, hey, focus on my lyrics, not my clothes.
Which is a branding choice in itself, ironically.
Exactly. And conversely, an artist with weak material will overcompensate.
Oh, big time. Massive pyrotechnics, extravagant costumes.
Yeah, dancers everywhere just to hide the fact that the songs are flat.
But Morris Day and the time eliminated that tug-of-war entirely.
They didn't view style as a distraction from the music.
No, they viewed style as the physical manifestation of the music.
I always look at it through the lens of architecture.
Oh, I like that. Let's hear it.
For a lot of artists, style is just decoration.
Right.
It's the paint on the outside of a house. It's superficial.
Easily changed.
Exactly. You can scrape off the country music aesthetic and paint on a cyberpunk synth pop aesthetic for the next album cycle.
And the house still stands.
Right, because the paint doesn't bear any structural weight. It's just for show.
But when style is merely decorative like that, it creates disjointed, fragmented careers.
Yeah, the eras don't make sense together.
And the audience never fully believes in the world the artist is presenting because they know deep down the artist can just change costumes tomorrow.
It's not real. But for Morris Day and the time, style wasn't the paint.
No.
Style was the steel beams holding the entire building up. It was the architecture itself.
That's a great way to frame it.
Right. Because if you take away the vanity, if you take away the mirror, the suits, the choreographed steps...
The music loses its context.
Exactly. The very structure of the music stops making sense. The style was structurally integral to the audio.
And that structural integration is what creates an immersive world.
An immersive world.
Yeah, they didn't just sell an album, they sold an invitation.
An invitation to what?
To their reality.
Hmm.
When you bought their record or when you bought a ticket to their concert, you were crossing the threshold into a very specific reality that they completely controlled.
And that is basically the blueprint for every massive pop icon operating today.
100%.
Yeah.
They laid the foundation for the multimedia artist decades before the digital era made it mandatory.
It's wild to think about. They anticipated the future of branding, but they achieved it with this analog rigor that is almost entirely absent in today's music industry.
Oh, it's so rare today. I mean, it's relatively easy to build an aesthetic on a social media grid using filters and mood boards.
Right. Anyone with an iPhone can do it.
Exactly. But it is staggeringly difficult to build that aesthetic live, in real time, with human musicians playing complex funk arrangements without a single safety net.
No backing tracks, no auto-tune saving you.
Exactly, just pure discipline.
So to bring this all together for everyone listening,
Yeah, let's recap.
we've charted a massive shift in how art is presented. We've seen how looking solely at chart numbers kind of blinds us to the actual cultural shifts happening below the surface.
Right, we missed the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And we unpacked the danger of reactive viral chasing versus the magnetic power of an unforced identity.
We analyzed the psychology of a frontman who elevated arrogance and humor to high art.
Using semiotic tools as simple as a mirror to build an entire world.
And we saw how none of that visual brilliance matters if it isn't anchored by relentless James Brown-level musical discipline.
The contrast between that visual looseness and musical rigidity, that is the secret formula.
By treating style as the structural foundation Rather than just superficial decoration, they created a complete entertainment experience.
So this should really make you look at your own professional footprint, your own presentation, or even just the way you communicate your ideas.
It really applies to everything.
It does. Are the different elements of your presentation fighting each other?
Is your style distracting from your substance?
Right. Or are you operating like a tightly rehearsed funk band where your aesthetic, your personality, and your technical execution are all locked into the exact same groove?
It demands a pretty rigorous self-audit, honestly.
It really does.
But, applying this history to the modern landscape leaves us with a rather profound dilemma regarding the future of art.
A dilemma. Lay it on us.
Well, if Morris Day and the time proved that true, lasting cultural influence requires style to be a structural foundation,
Yeah.
is it even possible in today's hypervisual, constantly scrolling digital world for an artist to survive purely on musical substance?
Oh, wow. That is the question, isn't it?
It is.
It really makes you wonder. We've reached a point where the visual framework isn't just accompanying the audio. The framework might actually be the art itself.
It might be.
The fully realized concept they pioneered isn't just an advantage anymore. It might be the absolute minimum requirement just to exist.
To even get noticed.
Exactly. And we have the architects of the Minneapolis Sound to thank for drawing up those blueprints.